Welcome to The Vault, a podcast where we open up about banking, business, and people in the community who have made a real difference. I'm Kyle Beckman, Vice President of Marketing and Customer Service at First Bankers Trust Company, and I'm going to be the host of the podcast. I'm going to sit down with our employees, our customers, and other local leaders in our community right here in the Midwest to talk to them about what drives business success, what drives leadership, what drives accountability, and just learn a little bit more about the insights that they can bring to the table for you and your business. So thanks for tuning in, and join us as we sit down today with Jim Obert, who's been not only an integral part of First Bankers Trust Company, but also of our entire community for the past 50 years. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, listening in, watching in. I'm sitting here with Jim Obert, one of the key figures in our bank's history and one of the folks on our Mount Rushmore here. Hey, so Jim has been with us for 47 years, recently retired. So can you just tell anybody who doesn't know your story a little bit about your background and how you came here and how you came about it?
Yeah, well, thanks. I've been with the bank, as you said, 47 years. And then one of the questions I've been getting in the last 3 months was, how do you like retirement? And I usually hear from young people like you, the retirement. And it made me think of a customer I had years ago when I was, that I worked with for years. And he'd finally came and decided, says, Jim, I'm going to retire. And I go, oh, that's too bad. I'm going to move to Florida. Oh, we're going to miss you. Well, I'm hearing that story, but then he simply gave me some advice. He says, when you grow up, you can also retire and do these fun things. So I guess I finally grown up, and that's kind of my response to people when they ask me, how's retirement? What are you doing? I said, well, when you grow up, you can experience it. And I think of that customer, and I think about what we've had in the bank over the years, how many great people we meet here. Several years ago, I was having a conversation about this particular customer. And I was thinking about this, and somebody told me he had passed away. And I said, oh, that can't be. So being the community banker I said, I don't think that's true. I got to find out. So I looked up the phone number. I'm randomly calling this number, nervous as heck is, what's going to be the reply on the other end, thinking I'm going to get some bad news. Well, I call the number. Somebody answers. It's a lady. And I introduced myself from First Bankers Trust and says, I'm just reaching out to find out how my customer, Andy is. I used to deal with him, what's happened. And is he, I'm thinking she's going to tell me, oh, well, he's right here next to me. We're driving around down in Florida, and I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. And all of a sudden, I just felt good because I was looking for the worst. And to this day, I think this customer's down in Florida, probably in his 90s, still having fun. But he said, when you grow up and retire, you can also have fun. So now that I've experienced about 3 months of retirement, it's a lot of fun. And again, that's my advice. Hang in there. And when you grow up, you can do the same thing. So here we are. So it's glad to be back here in friendly, the friendly confines of the bank, and walking in and seeing Gina and Callie that I've worked with for many, many years. I mentioned Gina and Callie. They're a great pair down there that worked with me. And then Gina is one of those longtime employees that's been part of our community bank for 30 plus years. And we've enjoyed a lot of good times, a lot of stories together there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, good. So let's unpack some of that too. So one, how did you come to the bank? How did you first start here, and what kept you around for 47 years?
That's an easy question I can answer. How did I come to the bank? And one of the stories, you always hear the story about the best job you'll ever have is the job you don't apply for. And I never realized what that really meant, but now I do. I in high school was involved in junior achievement program. The junior achievement program was big for high school students back in the late 70s, and it was a great program. I came into meeting a gentleman that was an executive vice president of First Bankers Trust at the time, Bill Weinberg, and I'll say shout out to Bill. I know he's living in Indiana now, and I had a chat with him, and Bill knew me. He gave me a phone call one day. He knew I graduated from high school, and hey, would you like a summer job here at the bank? We need somebody to do a little, maybe yard work, a little maintenance, cleaning restrooms, tidying up. And I said, Bill, it's the summer. I've got a job lined up with my dad working on the township. He's road commissioner, and I was going to help him and earn a little higher salary than I would have at the
Yeah.
bank.
Yep.
So I said, Bill, I don't know, probably not right now. I don't know where I'm going or what I'm going to do. And I also had a little part-time job working at the Maid-Rite, one of my another favorite lifelong
Yep.
customer, and Mr. Geisy would always say, "I set you on the path to your career." So I kudo that name too. So that fall, I was going to college, Quincy College, actually John Wood Community College. At the time, they had the partnership where you went to John Wood for 2 years and had your classes all at Quincy College, and then you transfer to Quincy College. So that's a little bit about how the education path took. But Bill called me up again that fall and says, "Hey, Jim, I think we've got a teller leaving on the weekends, on Saturday. Uh, we're very much involved with the license plate program in the community." So I said, "Bill, uh, that sounds like maybe I could give that a try." So I came in and met Bill and the staff. This was out at the 34th and Broadway location. We call it 34th now. It was always 33rd in the early days, and it was called Community National Bank at that time. We were our own separate little bank, and we can talk about some of the history leading to that. But it was Community National Bank where I got my start back in 1978, and again, I didn't know that job then that I really didn't apply for. And as far as I know, there's no application on file that the bank ever had that I ever applied for my job. So the best job, I guess I have to say, I ever had is the one I didn't apply for, and that's First Bankers Trust because it lasted 47 years. And that is, that's a true story. I didn't fill out an application, but again, Bill said, "You won't regret coming to the bank. It will work out if you work hard and put your mind to it. You will have a successful career." He says, I feel that, and I really did appreciate when I had a chance when I was retiring back last December when I did get a call from him and his wife Elaine to congratulate me, and he's kept in touch over the years, and I wish the best to him. But that's kind of how it started,
Yeah.
and I kind of held on to two jobs. I was here at the bank and still working at the Maid-Rite. There used to be a place called the Maid-Rite East out on Broadway.
Okay.
And somewhere along the line, I had to decide,
Yeah.
Maid-Rite and the bank. And to be honest with you, I never forgot Maid-Rite either.
Yeah.
I've been back there many, many times.
Yeah.
And that's always
It's a staple.
fun story. That's how it all started, and here we are.
That's great. So yeah, 47 years. How would you say the landscape with banking or even just here in the Quincy area, how's things really changed over that time since you started?
Gosh, I mean, when you look back that many years, and there's been a lot of changes. I mean, First Bankers and now, I mean, when we started, I look back in history. In fact, I know this is our 80th year. It existed in 1946
Yeah.
when we came about. And there again, that time for the bank, uh, people were coming off the Depression era. And for a group of guys, and a lot of those names, if you do a little history on the bank,
Yeah.
the families are still here in the Quincy community and have been part of the bank and still customers and it's just amazing the connections there. But that group took a risk, and boom, here we jump forward and we come up with Community National Bank where I started. At that time, branch banking rules were not all in place in the state of Illinois and across the country.
Right.
And we're a national bank. So Community National, where I started, was actually was a separate bank, had its own board of directors and its own staff and officers, own bookkeeping department, aside from what was Broadway National Bank, which right before I came to the bank changed their name to First National Bank.
Yeah.
So we had First National Bank and Community National Bank is when I first started.
Okay.
So when I look at changes there, here we had two separate banks operating with two separate boards for a period of time until we could join forces. And that was kind of interesting. I was kind of at the little bank, the little sister, the little brother of First National Bank. And we were out there. It was a great little community bank. Changes, in the basement was a full bookkeeping department.
Yeah.
As I started out as working as a teller and selling the license plates where everybody came in and you bought the license plates, I actually also learned to run a proof machine where, the checks that came in, they all had to run through a proof machine. And again, it's hard to imagine what that was all about. I never did master the speed, so I did not continue career as a room bookkeeper in those days. So the bank evolves, and we've seen different name changes, consolidations, big big players coming into the community and taking over some of the banks that were local at one time. A change in savings and loans. I mean, golly, when I started, we had 6 or 7 banks that everybody was pretty familiar with as far as names and who was which bank and this and that. Over the evolution of time, through the years, things have changed. We've had new players enter the market. We've had some other ones leave the market. And again, through it all, though, you know, First Bankers Trust, through thick and thin, we've been a fixture, and through some different name changes that we've had over the years that I went through.
Yeah. That's great. That's exciting. So when you think about people who are just now getting into the workforce, or people wanting to come, not even just in banking, but just anybody wanting to get started on their career, what type of advice would you give them?
You know, I never set out saying I was going to be a banker. I was a business major and a communication minor, I again, the job fell on my lap, and I stayed there, and I knew I'd be in the business world somewhere, and probably somewhere out there in the communication world. I'd be able to tie that through my career. So I think if you're out there, think about going somewhere and becoming a team player. I think being a team player is a key. Uh, we're all going to have a coach or a manager. You're part of the team. You might not agree with all the decisions all the time, but if you can come in with your focus, I'm going to go there. I want to be a part of the team, and then work maybe in different areas. I had the opportunity to work in several different areas through the bank. I ended up my career in the lending department, which I found the niche. So you've got to test the waters a little bit, find out what you like. There's a lot of opportunities in the financial industry, especially in banking. If you're a backroom person, you know, the accounting, the bookkeeping, the technology. I mean, we've got some great tech people here that I know nothing about technology when it comes to fixing this and that. But that's a great opportunity. Frontline people, if you're going to be on the front line, communications, I mentioned. Communication is important. You know, in the banking world, we're going to deal with customers. We're going to deal with the community. We're going to deal with coworkers. Learning to communicate, to speak up, to stand your ground. I think that's important. That was an important part of mine, is being able to, you know, my love was dealing with people and dealing with customers. The back end stuff, the bookkeeping, I mentioned the proof machine. I knew right away, that's nothing. I want to sit here and do this. I want to be out and see people and shake a few hands. So again, it all boils down to joining a team and then becoming a good team member.
Yeah. I mean, I love the call out to communication, because I think, you know, no matter how old you are, what job you're in, clear, concise, good communication with people is going to help bridge a lot of those gaps and make for a better experience for everybody.
Yeah, I reflect on that in a business seminar class I had at Quincy College with one of my professors. His name was Dick Maglieri, and it's a familiar name to some that went to the school there. But we had a business seminar class, and the point of that class, he stated that people are going out into the business world and have come back to him and said, we don't know how to communicate when we get out there. So we had a class where we sat around the table, and every class, he expected us all to participate as if we were sitting in a meeting at an office or a job, and not say stupid things, but acknowledge that you're involved and you care and you want to learn. And that's how the grade went. And I never forget that. That was a lesson. And I brought it forward, I think, to the bank that, you know, if I'm here and you're having a meeting, I mean, participate, people. Say something. Say something intelligent. Think a little bit, you know, because you need to be heard. And hopefully I've done that, been able to communicate. And there's nothing worse than sitting in a meeting where nobody is responding to you. If you're leading the meeting, anybody had any comments or questions, and you know, we all do. It's just getting over that fright to speak up. And again, I look back at that and say, again, communications is an important role, especially if you've got a position where you're going to deal with the public and want to deal with the public, be seen, be known, not only on your job, but outside of your job too.
Yeah. Well, so you also, I mean, we've talked Quincy College, First Bankers Trust, made right reference, right? So you've been really, really thick in the community for a long time. So what's some of the other stuff that you've done over your career outside of the bank walls that you've been involved in?
Outside the bank, for years, I had a love of radio and from little on, and I've been able to manage my banking career with a part-time career, hobby, however you want to do it. I worked in radio as a sportscaster earlier, but as a radio personality, and I've worked at WTAD radio for a good number of years, and I still toy in that a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, decided I could speak, and people would tell me I had a decent voice. I learned to be an auctioneer, and I do some auctioneering. I have a charity auction coming up here, and that's fun to do, getting out in front of the people. But through all of that, that part of the communication part, I think, helped me in my banking career. And I had great support from my managers and leaders on that, because I was always careful. And I think you've got to be careful if you're going to do something outside the bank on your own time. It's up to you, but you got to manage that so it doesn't interfere with your primary job, which First Bankers Trust is always number uno. But to have a hobby and something else to do like that complemented me, and meeting people and contacts to bring in as customers for the bank. And along with that, I've had the pleasure of being involved in some boards in Quincy. I've been involved in my church. That's an important part of my life, is in my church. Family, of course, is the number uno.
That's right.
And I'll talk about family, and we'll go on about that in just a little bit. But I've been a board member for years and years on the Western Catholic Union in town, and supporting that organization, and other organizations that the YMCA I've helped with that. Quincy Notre Dame, I've helped on their fundraiser. I'm currently serving on their board, and those are just, you'd get the question, how do you fit it all in? I don't know. It just works out. I mean, if you do it, it does. You make time for it.
Yeah.
And I did that, and whatever. I like being involved in the community, but all those contacts as a banker, if you're going to be a banker, those contacts are great. And every one of those opens up some doors to meet the demands that a bank has for you to perform your job, is to bring in customers, bring people in. And so we're a community bank, and being part of the community, that's a great thing about the bank, Kyle.
Yeah.
Always, through all the leadership that I've had, the presidents, Don Ganuzzi, what a great guy. Don, I learned a lot from him. Art Greenbank, who was the local boy, went on town, came back.
Yeah.
And then, Alan Schaefer currently, Alan grew up in a small town up in Iowa, and brought his expertise to the bank, and is the current president. But through all the presidents, the support and the encouragement for the employees is to get out in the community. And it's not like, I better not take this personal lunch or go play golf here and feel bad about it. Those are things that are encouraged, and I appreciate that from all management. And I think that's the knowledge of a good community bank, is we're going to be a community bank. We better act like one, and we better be involved in the community. And I know I was always encouraged to do it. And sometimes I probably didn't take advantage of that opportunity enough. So, yeah.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think that's at the basis of it, right? Like, a community bank is focused on the community, right? And I think that's kind of a differentiator between mega banks and your mom and pops, or your community banks, is you invest in the technology, right? Like, you're trying to add new services and products and all that for all your customers, but at the end of the day, you still have that relationship, right? Like, somebody could walk in the door and say, hey, I need to talk to Jim, and Jim's going to know who it is that's coming in, and you're going to know the situation. I think that's what makes community banks a little bit different.
Absolutely. You take it a step further, you bring in the word family. You start to know these people, you start to know their family. And again, they do ask for you. And, there's some situations, what I always have found, it's amazing what people will come in and talk to their banker about.
Yeah.
It may have nothing to do with banking. It may be personal things. It may be things, I'm not sure why you're telling me this and not telling your clergyman this, but I felt that was neat, and I really thought that was good. And again, I guess it's advice to the young people too, or anyone, is that you develop a trust with your banker. If you can be trustworthy and loyal, and those people expect bankers to be trustworthy. I always remember our President Don Ganuzzi, when he announced that our name would change from First Midwest Bank to First Bankers Trust. I remember the meeting clearly. He said, we wanted a strong name. And he looked at us and said, what is the strongest word in the name First Bankers Trust? Well, not first, not bankers, but the word trust. That's what we need to build in the community with our customers. So I feel I did a pretty good job of, working in what is a very confidential world, and developing trust with some people. There's always those people that may question, why you couldn't do this or that for them. But in general, that involvement and I'll always say, leaving the bank, the toughest thing for me was to walk away from. I relate it to, there's 3 C's in credit when you're making a credit decision. I said there's 3 C's in a career. You've got your coworkers, your customers, and your community.
Yeah.
So when I walked away, it's tough to leave your coworkers, because I've been blessed in 47 years at this institution. We've had a lot of great coworkers, and you want to have stories. Just let's get a table of the retired, and we could tell stories I've long never got.
I bet.
So the coworkers are great, and always were. Customers, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why we're here, for the customers. The customers pay our salary. A job as a banker is, we've really got one simple job, is to bring, you know, saver and borrower together.
Yeah.
And we manage the money, and we help, give the saver a little interest, and the borrower who needs the money, they get the opportunity to buy their house or their car or their farm, whatever the case may be. So, the customer is so important. They are what makes our bank, and makes me as an employee. You've got to
Right.
please them. When you don't please a customer, generally they're going to let somebody here know, but usually there's an answer to why that didn't work out. And hopefully you can, at the end of the day, appease them, and you leave with a smile. I always found that if I had a customer that got a little upset over something, if we could sit down and talk things over, and at the end of the day, we kind of each chuckled or had a smile,
Yeah.
at least we accomplished something there. And then the other C is the community, just being involved out in the community. And we talked about that, the encouragement of the bank and being out there involved in the community. So those are the things that three things,
Yeah.
my coworkers, my customer, my community. I couldn't think that enough. The 3 C's of maybe life and a career.
Yeah.
No.
So that's great.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's good insights. So,
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So over the past 4, almost 5 decades, you surely have got some good stories, right? Like what's something you recall funny or good fondly? Just what's something that stands out to you over your time in your career?
This isn't funny, but first I just want to touch on family in the bank.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
family was one thing while I'm thinking about it. The key to my banking career, and I'm married, and we have seven children, and now we've developed into 8 grandchildren, with number 9 on the way.
Yeah.
And throughout my whole career, uh, stories were made to have just family time.
Yeah.
And I've never, and I think this is a positive story, I've never not, in my positions at the bank, been able to attend any one of my kids' or grandkids' events if I wanted to be there. I mean, the bank was always very flexible. So when I tell the story, that's the story I will tell about First Bankers Trust, is the acknowledgement of management and the leadership, is that family first. And that's so true. I think that maybe
agree.
not everybody,
agree.
but I worked my schedule. I worked my schedule around that. There were days, Kyle, you like softball and baseball, where I would take an extended lunch hour and be allowed to do that, where I could run out to the ball diamond and put on my sneakers and get sand in my shoes,
Yeah.
coach my son or daughter's softball or baseball game, and come back to work and do the afternoon. And it all worked out. And you just find times to do those things.
Yep.
So there's so many stories, and funny stories. Like I said, if you want to bring in funny stories, bring in a group of us retired people. And I can think of stories right now that maybe I'm not going to air on the air.
Yeah.
Things that just happen in the office with people, with customers. I mean, customers are always out there. I think of a customer calling me in the middle of October and say, "Hey, you're a bank. Could you tell me when Good Friday is next year?" We're sitting around and we figured a banker would know when Good Friday would be. Well, you get questions like that. And as I look back over the history and think of what are the things I had, a lot of good stories and a lot of fun with in my tenure, something that I put together that was with the bank, and we talked about the other community banks at the time, is, as you know, I'm a big baseball fan and a big softball fan, and I love the game and always will. But I came up with this idea. I was driving around my wife's hometown. It was down in Washington, Missouri. And I saw something in the paper. Maybe I wasn't driving around. Maybe I was reading the paper down there while I was visiting her family. And they had what was called the Battle of the Bands. So I just took bands, and then we have Battle of the Bands.
Sure.
And something in my brain said, Battle of the Bands, Battle of the Banks. What could the banks do? Let's have a Battle of the Banks. So, and to this day, I have people coming up to me and we'll talk about the Battle of the Banks. What was the Battle of the Banks? Well, I came up with this idea that I love softball. The bank is there how can I put together a softball team for the bank? And I did for years of that, and appreciate all the sponsorship from the banks over the years. But I came up with an idea. Why don't we have a co-ed softball team?
Yeah.
And part of my involvement in the community at the time, there was a community bankers association that we get together on a monthly basis to different, even at that time, younger bankers. There's different younger professionals now and things that get together, but we'd have monthly meetings and do things. So I said, we've got, I believe at the time, 7 pretty strong banks and savings institutions. What if I get together and have a battle of the banks?
Yeah.
So I came up with the idea. I went to one of my bosses and said, I don't know if we support as a bank, but if you want to take that on your own, you can take it on your
Yeah.
So I put that together. And for, I believe, 15 years on an annual basis, generally it was the first week of June, we had what was called the Battle of the Banks co-ed softball tournament that I spearheaded. And it started out the first year, everybody having a lot of fun. I remember one of our workers here who hadn't played softball in a long time. He came out and played, and that next Monday he was walking very slow. And Phil, if you know who you are, I'm thinking of you. Yeah, I still picture that, and I'm thinking, wow, he must be old, but he really, but he just hadn't played. Yeah, and so we did that year after year, and that evolved into a community event where we brought in a group to sell refreshments and raise money that we gave to charity. And brought in, professional umpires, local professional umpires that would do the right job. And we had the Battle of the Banks co-ed softball tournament again. And the only time I ever made my picture of me as an athlete in the paper was on a Sunday when we had these looking good ads in the local paper. And they had me swinging a bat, and one of my buddies, it looks at that ball, it looks like you popped it straight up. I think he was right, but the Battle of the Banks co-ed softball tournament brought a lot of memories to me. It was a lot of good time, but it was an idea that you got to take no matter what you have and run with it.
Yeah.
But it only wasn't to play softball. It was to meet the other bankers.
Yeah.
And from that, I developed a good relationship over the years that, you could pick up the phone when you needed a question or needed help with one of the local bankers. And I love that about the community too. That tied in a great fellowship among the competition.
Sure.
I've always said when somebody comes in and might say, hey, I'm not too happy with this place or that, my goal was always, I'm not knocking the competition. I'm here to promote what we can do and what we can do for you. And hopefully we can help you and maybe just a little bit better as a community bank here. But again, we have a lot of great banks and financial institutions out there. But when I go to my memory bank, I just think that little area was just a lot of fun. I was in charge of it. It worked well. Everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted it back, and they missed it when it was gone. But that kind of evolves to what we talked about at the beginning of this, that all of a sudden some of the banks changed. I mean, one of our bigger banks lost employees and changed and downsizing and other banks coming into the community and buying up. And so we went through all those changes. And I think that kind of started that we couldn't field the teams anymore after that. But anyway, there's a story you asked for.
I was say,
There you have it. The Battle of the Banks. Yeah, maybe you can revise it. And, hey, I've started playing pickleball now in my retirement. There we go. Maybe we can have a
Battle of the Banks.
alternative. Invite me. I'll come back and play. Don't expect much out of me. But anyway, there's always an opportunity they try out.
Yeah. We'll have to find the pictures of that. I'm sure we'll track it out somewhere, but that'd be great to share that.
Yeah.
And I mean, shoot, with retirement, I think you could bring it back, right? You could run it and lead the charge on it.
Hey, I'll never say never. Yeah. I never turned down an opportunity.
All right.
And, again, like I said, the best job you'll ever have is the one you didn't apply for.
Yeah. That's great.
Here I am.
That's awesome. Well, that's all I've got. Anything else you want to share with anybody? Any parting words or anything that we haven't talked about that you want to go over?
Just thank you for the opportunity. I said, share a story or two. And again, it's great. I thank, as I mentioned, I thank First Bankers Trust for a great banking career. I'll always continue to wear the colors and promote the bank here. And we'll do that. Again, any customers that I've had over the years and I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, I always feel bad you don't get to say goodbye to those. Thanks to my customers and thanks to my coworkers. And again, thanks to the community. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not moving to Florida like the other fellow did. I'll go visit, but I think I'll stay here. I'll be part of the community until the good Lord has a different role for me.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Well, really appreciate you taking the time, jumping on here with us. Appreciate everything you've done for the bank and the community over the past 50 years. I think you've got quite a legacy that you left behind with us. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I appreciate it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in on that. This is the first episode, so we'll have a lot more to come for you guys, but this is really kind of the gist of what we're looking for. Just a lot of genuine conversations with people like Jim, people who have insights that they can share with us that we can pass along to you. So again, thank you for watching. We'll see you again on the next episode. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to our first episode of The Vault. Real stories, real conversations with real people. Hope to see you again next time.